maybe for your student teacher work sample during student teaching, or maybe for a class that comes before student teaching. Here's a little unit planning sheet that you can use to help you just conceive of your unit and make sure everything's going to be aligned with your learning objective, your pre-assessment, and your final assessment. So the first page here is a blank for you to use for yourself. The second page contains an example. So first, of course, you probably already know which unit or the subject, the topic of your unit. So maybe it's To Kill a Mockingbird, maybe it's informational writing, maybe it's an argument essay. Whatever it happens to be here, just starting from the basics. What unit will this be over? And then you want to choose an objective based on a standard. So remember all of your lessons about how to find a standard and then distill that standard into a simplified learning objective that's going to cover one key skill. Let's take a look at the example down here. We've got Romeo and Juliet. That's our overall unit we're working on. The play we're reading, the novel we're reading, the type of essay we're writing, or whatever. The learning objective here, I can analyze how key moments in a text impact character development. That comes from the Missouri Learning Standard 2D for literary texts. Analyze how complex characters develop over the course of a text to advance the plot and develop the theme. So this is one key skill, analyze how key moments in a text impact character development. There's a couple things inherent in that objective. They're going to have to be able to identify key moments in a text and then also analyze how those moments impact the character's development. So any of those skills will be a part of teaching that I do in this unit. I have put final unit summative assessment first here before pre-assessment because sometimes it's helpful to use the backwards design concept. In backwards design, we think of, okay, well, how can I measure whether they've gotten that key learning objective or whether they've gotten that standard? Also, you may already have, because you may be borrowing a unit and making it your own, or your cooperating teacher may have in mind for you what the summative assessment is already going to be. Maybe it's already going to be a paper. Maybe you have a shared assessment within your curriculum department at your school. So maybe everybody who teaches this gives the same test. You may already have your summative assessment in mind. I want them to write a paper. I want them to give a presentation. I want them to take a test. I want them to do a project. It's just really, really important to make sure that summative assessment includes an assessment of that objective. It will also assess several other objectives because it's English, and so a test assesses lots of different things at once, or a paper does, right? But you want to make sure on the scoring guide, on the rubric, or you have in mind how are you going to score for the objective that you've mentioned. So here's an example down here. Remember the objective, they should be able to identify key moments in a text and analyze how those impact character development. So here, students are going to choose a scene from the play based on a character they've chosen and act out that scene, and also write a character analysis essay about that character, exploring the complexity of the character. That essay will include pointing out key moments where we see character development and we see the complexity of the character. So they're going to act it out and they're going to write about it. Now notice the summative assessment matches with the learning objective and the standard, right? Not every part of it, but it's a key thing that I'm assessing on the final summative assessment. Next, you want to think, okay, so how will I get data? How will I get information on how they're already doing on this and what I need to focus on? Because we've been talking about character analysis since kids were in like 2nd or 3rd grade, right? That's how long we talk about characters. So how will I know what they already know and what they need to know more of? So you want to design a pre-assessment that helps you gauge what students need from you instructionally. So how can you pre-assess student knowledge of this learning objective? You could give a quiz over character analysis, character development. You can Google for ideas, by the way. You could find a reading passage that's at the high school level, or even a passage from Shakespeare. If they've read a Shakespeare before, give them a passage with some questions at the end. They can be multiple choice, even if your final assessment isn't multiple choice. It can be your writing, even if your final assessment is a test. The only thing is it needs to be over that same learning objective. So how can you get a quick idea of what they already know or how they're already doing on the same learning objective? Google pre-assessment for character analysis and see what you can come up with, just to give you some ideas. Here's what I might do. I might give students a brief reading passage and then have them write a paragraph analyzing a character. I'm not going to help them out too much. It's going to be sort of like a blind assessment. So I'm just going to hand it to them, ask them to read it, and then ask them to follow the instructions to write the paragraph. You don't want to help them out too much because it's not for a score that goes in the grade book. It's for you to gather information about what they already know and how they can already write a character analysis, but just a paragraph, right? You will have a scoring guide probably with some of these key things that are inherent in the learning objective spelled out. Could you identify the key moments? How was your were you actually analyzing? How was your explanation? How things like that help you see. And then in your TWS, you're going to write about what you notice in the pre-assessment. What types of skills do you feel they're lacking, and how you're planning to adjust your plan to make sure they have those skills. And then, of course, you're going to write an actual lesson plan, but just focus on one key day where you're going to teach them how to do this character now, how to do this objective, how to do this skill. So one day where you'll be teaching the learning objective in a pretty direct way, or giving them practice or explanation over that learning objective. In the middle of the unit, somewhere within that unit, when are you going to hit that in a really hard and direct way? So here's an example. At the end of Act 2, I'm going to have students choose a favorite character so far. I'm going to teach a lesson on character analysis and how to analyze characters and how to write analysis of characters. And then we're going to go back through Act 2 and find some of these key moments that reveal important information about characters. Probably would have something like a graphic organizer for students to do at this point. I would take that graphic organizer and I might look at that data. How are they doing so far? Do I need to go over some things again, or are we doing a good job at picking these things out? I might even have them write a paragraph to see if they got better since the pre-assessment. So sort of like mid-assessment occurring with that lesson plan. Then you could say we're going to continue this same graphic organizer as we move into Act 3. I want them to find a couple more moments in Act 3 that reveal this character assessment. In other words, you're building toward that final unit summative assessment as you teach through the unit. This way, you've got here's the skill I want students to have. And here's how I am using instruction to make sure they get better at that skill, to give them multiple opportunities to directly practice that skill. Remember too, when you're observed, we need to see that they know what that skill is when we see this lesson plan. And yeah, we want to see you teach this key lesson plan day. That's a really important day for us to see that you're teaching the things that your unit is supposed to be about. You should put on the board, what is that objective that you're hitting as you move throughout this unit? This key objective should be an explicit part of your instruction. Students should know that's what you're working on. And I should see that when I come into the classroom and observe as well. Again, this is not a required assignment. It's just sort of a worksheet to help you conceive of a unit overall before you start to do TWS Section 1.2, the second half of Section 1, and Section 2 as well, with all of your data, with your pre-assessment and your post-assessment on it.